Welcome, everybody, to the Cover 2 podcast. My name is Nick Nenad.
And I'm Jared Smith.
And we have a big NBA show for you today, specifically an NBA playoffs preview, review, whatever you want to call it. We're going to be going over the first round and some of the games that happened on Monday. We are recording currently about 15 minutes after the Clippers-Mavericks game went final. So we watched all four of the games today. We want to discuss the games on Tuesday. So if you're watching this a little later in the week, we will go over the entire series. Don't worry, you aren't late. We will be discussing some of the elements of a lot of the game ones today, but not too much. We will also get into some storylines about Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Bucks, Kristaps Porzingis, and many other things. We will end the podcast with Lakers Blazers. As you guys know, we obviously want to talk about that. I did not have time to get my Clippers jersey on, Jared, because I was too busy rooting for the team tonight. Clippers got a big win, but also today was Jazz Nuggets. They started the day with a great overtime game. Donovan Mitchell, not a big deal, 57 points in the first game of the NBA playoffs.
And a loss, loss.
Exactly.
Doesn't matter.
Exactly. We also had Celtics 76ers. Celtics getting the win in that one, and a destruction of the Brooklyn Nets by the Toronto Raptors. But we want to go back to the Clippers to start this off. This is the game you guys all just watched if you're watching this on Tuesday. Jared, kind of give me your thoughts on the game. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased watching the Clippers. I was flipping channels to hockey and baseball, too, because I thought they would have it in the bag. And every single time I came back, the game was close. So just give me your initial thoughts on what you saw, and then we'll get into the Porzingis ejection.
Going into this game, the Clippers obviously have the upper hand. The Dallas Mavericks have two-star players in Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis. And other than that, they have some role players in Seth Curry and Tim Hardaway Jr., who, are three-point shooters and can be productive as far as scoring the ball. But in reality, when you look at the Clippers roster from up to down, they have, if not one of, probably the most talented and most depth per position all the way down 1 through 15. This is actually the first game that they've had their entire roster together. They've had guys, coming in and out of the bubble. Obviously, the whole Lou Williams story, we don't need to get into that again. Montrezl Harrell came back for his first game. He played 15 minutes, and even though he only had 6 points, he's another big defender. This team is full of defenders. When you really look at him, you've got Kawhi Leonard, who, has been defensive MVP before. You have Paul George, right, who I don't know if he's ever won a defensive MVP, but he's in that mix. He's known as being a defensive stopper. And then you have, screen's messing up here a little bit. You've got Patrick Beverley, who that's what he does, right? He's the defensive. I don't want to call him the Kobe stopper, but like that's really what he does. He hangs his hat on defense. And then Montrezl Harrell, of course. So you have all these defensive players, and that's what they kind of lean their hat on in a sense. And then offensively, it's really Kawhi and Paul George. Coming into this game, Clippers started out on an 18-2 run. I was like, oh boy, Dallas, you're about to get run out of the gym. Well, at the end of the first quarter, Dallas had put up like 35 points. So I don't know what happened to the Clippers, but after the first 4 or 5 minutes, they just let off the gas. It was like they put pedal to the metal and they kind of emptied their tank really quickly. And Dallas was able to kind of sustain those early punches and get back into the fight, thankfully because of Luka mostly. But what I really want to talk about, we will get to the end of the game situation. And Nick, I do want to get your thoughts on this, even though you are a Clippers fan, is the ejection of Kristaps Porzingis. Now, he got an early technical in the first half where he was called for a foul, and he kind of threw his arm in the air in disgust. And he might have said a few words, but none of those words were directed at the referee. None of those words were directed at the opponent. He was literally talking to air, right? And he was just showing his frustrations because he cares, and it was in the heat of the moment directly after the foul. For him to get a technical foul for that, to me, is so weak and ticky-tack by the NBA, especially in the playoffs, right? It's one thing if this is a regular season game And maybe that player has a history of, getting technical fouls or just kind of going off the deep end. But we're talking about Kristaps Porzingis here, right? It's not like the guy gets technical fouls all day. And like I said, it was in the heat of the moment, and then he kind of let it go. So for him to get that one technical in the first half, I don't think was fair at all. The second technical, he was actually coming in to defend Luka when Luka got fouled, and Luka kind of took offense to the foul. So of course, your teammate in Kristaps is going to kind of step in and try to help out, right? Well, he gets a technical for basically shoving one of the Clippers players. Do I think it was a technical? No. It was a little ticky-tack as well. It was soft, but I can at least understand a little bit more why, because he wasn't a part of the play and he then kind of came in unexpectedly. So that one at least is a little bit debatable, but the first technical, there is no way in hell that he should have gotten that. So for those who don't know, if you get two technicals in an NBA game, you're immediately ejected, right? Doesn't matter what the technicals are for or any of that. You get two technicals in a game, you are ejected. Kristaps Porzingis got ejected in the third quarter, right? It was a kind of a back and forth battle, and when he got ejected, it's like, okay, if you're the Clippers, it's like it's Luka versus everyone else, right? Even though Luka went off for 42 points, you let Luka score, and you say we're not going to let you beat us single-handedly, and that is basically what the Clippers did. Because, like I said, going back to my beginning statement in the argument, the Clippers have way too much depth, and their defensive stoppers basically just collapsed on Luka and said, okay, go ahead, try to beat us 1-on-5. And it was just no match.
Yeah, no, I'll get to the Clippers game in a second, about how they played. What I think happened tonight necessarily with the kind of a letdown for most Clippers fans, the way they played. Game was really close. The Mavericks were up by double digits at some points. Definitely wasn't the best showing for the first playoff game of the year. But getting to the Kristaps Porzingis ejection, I'll just say it. When you look back on it now, and I'm sure you could go in the annals of history and find something right that's close to it, but for what Kristaps Porzingis did to get the first technical, I think that might be one of the worst technical fouls in the history of the NBA, because all he did was flail his arms and complain to open air. Right, like he didn't even look at a ref and do it. The referee's call came from over to the right of Kristaps. Just a terrible call, because that it's playoff basketball and it's something like what happened later might happen, especially when the Clippers are filled with guys like Marcus Morris and Patrick Beverley and others. Those guys are on the court for the Clippers to instigate that exact thing. And what did Morris do? Not only did he have a great game and was possibly the MVP for the Clippers tonight, he also got the second best player on the Mavericks, one of their key scorers, just thrown out of the game completely. Two things I just want to say about this. Number one, Kristaps needs to be smarter. If you get a tech, you can't do what he did. It's not like Morris punched Luka Doncic or anything. They were going face to face. They were having discussion like men. Wasn't really that big of a deal. Kristaps actually instigated to make it a little worse, make Morris push him, all that stuff. He deserved the tech for the second one for sure, and it was dumb because he got the first one. But the reason he was even in that position is because the NBA has become so soft with their calls of fouls in general and technical fouls. There really needs to be a change from the NBA office to stop with these ticky-tack foul calls and technical fouls, or change the technical foul rules. Maybe make it so that if you get 3 technical fouls total, and maybe or two, if 2 of them are violent, right? Something like that. Maybe count flagrant fouls as technical fouls, something like that. Make it so that the violence and the pushing and shoving isn't allowed. But arguing with a referee, that really should not get you ejected unless you're being very, very brash, or you're getting in the referee's face. And I think we don't see that a lot, right? We see the LeBrons complain. We even see the Kawhi Leonard complain. We see Patrick Beverley complain on every single play. But usually it's not very malicious, and it's not really worthy of a technical foul. And when you look back in the 90s, we all watched The Last Dance. I mean, they're clotheslining the hell out of each other in those games. We don't need that. But, I mean, to say that, like, a lot of the fouls just period in the NBA today are really fouls, a lot of it's just not true. Like, they're not even fouls. They're like, oh, I can't touch a guy anymore. So I think the NBA really needs to look at itself, not only with the technical foul rules, but with fouls in general, and it will kind of fix the technical foul rule. Yeah, no, I think it was a terrible call, and it really affected the Mavericks tonight. Now, Jared, what did you see from the overall game's perspective, especially at the end, and how much do you think that Porzingis ejection actually affected the Mavericks in this game?
Well, I think it did because listen, Porzingis is 7'3", but he can dribble the ball like a point guard, right? He's got 3-point shooting ability. Now, his defense is suspect. For being 7'3" and having the wingspan and as big as he is, you would think that he would be a little more effective on the defensive side of the ball. He's not really, but in a matchup with the Clippers where you've got Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and the bevy of other players that they have, his length and his size is going to be a huge asset for the Mavericks defense. So you take him out of that, and it's going to be a big deal, right? And I think really, I think the Mavericks did a great job with Seth Curry and Tim Hardaway Jr. stepping up and making big 3-point shots to kind of keep the Mavericks in the game. But in the end, listen, the Mavericks had zero chance of winning this series without both of those stars on the court. So you take Luka out and or Kristaps, and it's a wrap, right? It's going to be a sweep. The Mavericks need both of those guys at their best. And let's not forget, in the first quarter, I believe it was in the first few minutes, Luka actually rolled. I don't know if he rolled his ankle or he hurt his leg somehow, right? And he went back to the locker room, and it was like, oh dang, like they might be without Luka just to begin this series. And this was during that early 18-2 Clipper run when they were about to run the Mavericks out of the gym. So fortunately, Luka was able to come back from that. I want to keep an eye on, what's Luka going to look like tomorrow? Because obviously his adrenaline was going. Yeah. He was already loose. He was kind of able to get that ankle, to still play on the ankle. But tomorrow, once he wakes up, how sore is it going to be? Is it going to swell up? These games, you only get a day of rest. So, the Mavericks will get tomorrow off, but then they're right back on the court on Wednesday. So how's that ankle going to feel? That's going to be a big thing to kind of watch and see, because if he's not at 100%, it's a wrap. Clippers are going to win. They're going to sweep this series 4-0, and they'll be moving on to the next round.
Yeah, and with these NBA playoffs, they're different than ever, right? Because there's no road games, there's no home games, and the way the NBA is scheduled, with the way they have the two courts playing right now, they're going to have 4 games per day, and everybody's playing every other day. We're not going to have these weird schedules where certain teams are playing one game and then they're getting 3 days off or anything like that. I think they're going to adjust the schedule a little bit for the bigger games, the Eastern Conference, Western Conference Finals, and the NBA Finals, of course. But for the first round and second round, they kind of want to get these games over with as fast as possible, especially with, just the whole coronavirus threat. I think they just want to, be like, okay, let's get these games done, and it's efficient, and people want to watch sports. But yeah, talking about injuries and stuff like that, not only has it taken a lot of players kind of getting used to and getting back into play, but yeah, if Luka's ankle is messed up after this game for having to be the focal point because of Porzingis' ejection, it's going to really affect the Mavericks. Do I think the Mavericks can win any more than one game in this series? No. I would predict it's still a sweep, especially since the Clippers won tonight. I think they took it a little easy on the Mavericks. I think they didn't take them as seriously today. And I think they'll come out guns a-blazing and blow them the hell out on Wednesday, to be honest. I don't know what will happen in the rest of the series, but I think they'll make a statement game and prove to a lot of people on social media and in general that they're not just some slouch. I think the problem with the Clippers is that they're not a cohesive unit yet because of a lot of the issues off the court. You, of course, had Lou Williams. Lou Williams is not the same yet. Okay, he's not the Lou Williams that was the 6th man of the year right now. Montrezl Harrell has barely played. Very personal reasons why he wasn't playing, and he had to deal with that. And unfortunately, he hasn't been able to get in the gym and play. But the fact that he barely played tonight, I'm going to look at the stats really quickly. I think it was
15 minutes and he had 6 points.
Yeah, so essentially without Montrezl Harrell, they still beat the Mavericks by 8. And Lou Williams played okay, but for 31 minutes to only get 14 points. Not Lou Williams like. He missed a couple big layups at the end too. It's just this once this Clippers unit gels and gets used to it, like they almost need these Mavericks games to get back together. Like it kind of sounds ridiculous because it's the playoffs, but the Clippers should end up sweeping the Mavericks. I don't think they'll mind a little bit, even if the series goes a little longer, just because they need those extra games. I know that sounds crazy, I personally wouldn't mind if the Mavericks actually win one of these games, extend it a little bit, and get Montrezl Harrell those minutes, get Lou Williams those minutes, and have the stars ball out. And then when you look at Doncic's game specifically, because we do need to switch over to a couple other games and a couple other series, I think Doncic played well tonight because of the coverage on him. And what I mean by that is Patrick Beverley was in foul trouble all game and essentially wasn't even guarding him. The real concern, if you're a Mavericks fan, is that, even with Luka's 42 points, nobody else really did anything for the Mavericks in this game. I know Kristaps got thrown out, but Tim Hardaway played solid, made a couple threes. Like you mentioned, Seth Curry, he played well, but they're not stars. Like, they can't do much. They can just kind of make threes and get open and stuff like that. So Kristaps really needs to come back and help Luka this next game, or like you said, Jared, it's going to be worse of a sweep than we even expected. All right, moving on. We'll get a couple of the easier series out of the way here. We have Raptors Nets today. Jared, I'll start with this real quick. I'm really a Raptors fan coming into this playoffs as a basketball fan. I'm really loving the way that Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet, and Pascal Siakam are playing for this team. I really think this team has a chance to get to the NBA Finals. I think that in this bubble system, they haven't lost a hitch. A lot of people were surprised without Kawhi Leonard that they're playing this well. I think we're now seeing why they won the finals last year, right? Like, with this team and Kawhi, it's no surprise they won the finals. Kyle Lowry, I think, is oddly in his prime this year. Pascal Siakam is becoming a superstar in front of our eyes, and Fred VanVleet's becoming a very, very solid NBA player. So I'm really excited about the Raptors. Not too much to say about this series. The Raptors should sweep them. I know the Nets played well in the seeding, but nobody was really trying in the seeding. So I'm not going to take it seriously, especially after they got just destroyed today. So I'm just a big fan of the Raptors. Jared, what are your thoughts on the Raptors?
The Raptors, what they do best is they buy into the system. Right now, Pascal Siakam, you could say he's an all-star, and he is clearly the best player, but their entire starting five scored in double digits, right? And then you have Serge Ibaka and Terrence Davis coming off the bench to give you double digits as well. I believe Serge Ibaka had 22 points. So when you have the scoring threats that are coming from all different angles, right? It's not just, with the Dallas Mavericks situation where you only have two prolific scorers. With the Raptors, any guy can go off on any particular night, in a sense, at least in their starting five. And so it's like, all right, we're going to take this one guy away, and then this other guy is going to step up and score for us. They also just play really well on the defensive end of the floor. That's kind of where they hang their hat on and where they get their offense from. So, yeah, you're right. This series should be a sweep. Maybe Brooklyn gets one game because Brooklyn, they don't have a superstar either. They don't even have a Kyle Lowry, right? They have a lot of young players, and yes, they can get up and down the court, but the experience of the Raptors and coming off of being the last champions, I really just think the Raptors have too much experience, too much depth, and it is going to be a relatively easy series for them. I would not be surprised if they swept.
I expect the Raptors to sweep, and I just think they're one of those teams that's gelling really well in the bubble. Like, Kyle Lowry's invested, Siakam's invested. They want to prove to people that last year's NBA Finals was a fluke. Do I think they can win? No, I think there's easily 3 Western teams better than them, maybe 4, that they would have really no chance against, especially without home field advantage in Toronto as well. I think that was a big part of the NBA Finals last year. Yeah. Exactly. So, I'm excited about the Raptors. I'm not excited about this series, but I'm excited about the Raptors moving on. All right, let's move it to Celtics 76ers. Now, Jared, I only saw a little bit of this game, but you kind of know my thoughts on the Celtics. I think their young team fits this bubble well. Like, they're going to be one of these teams like the Raptors that plays well in this bubble because they're young and they have their legs, right? They don't have to worry about that whole 4-month layoff affecting them. 76ers, it was a close game, 109-101. What I see from this series, though, unfortunately, is without Ben Simmons, I can't give the 76ers a legitimate chance. Right? It's kind of sad because I think this would have been an awesome series to watch, maybe the series to watch in the first round, but I just don't trust Joel Embiid to lead the team to multiple wins. And especially since I'm so high on the Celtics, I just can't see the Celtics. I can't see the 76ers winning the series.
The Celtics, listen, as a Lakers fan, this like kills me to say because I don't ever want to hype up the Celtics. I don't ever want to talk, say anything nice about the Celtics. I wish the Celtics weren't even in the playoffs, but they are, and they're a very good team. And they have Jason Tatum, who is a budding superstar, about to be box office, if not already box office type player. I mean, this dude is just straight balling, right? He is every game you see more and more confidence coming out of him. Last year and even in his rookie year, especially, guys were daring him to shoot threes. And now it's like this guy is knocking him down, no problem. Now he only went 2 for 5 from 3-point land on this game, but it's like his confidence has grown so much. He's got a post up game. He's got a fall away. I mean, he literally does it all. And then you add Jaylen Brown, obviously Kemba Walker, who they signed in the offseason, Gordon Hayward, who had a little bit of a scare. He twisted his ankle. So not sure what his status is going to be for the rest of this series going forward. He's more of a role player now, even though they kind of expected him to be one of the main pieces when they originally signed him a couple years ago. But then you've got guys like Marcus Smart, Enes Kanter, even Grant Williams, right, who came out of Tennessee. He's just like a scrappy, young, defensive-minded dude that doesn't have to come in and be the scorer. He can come in and either guard one of the team's best players, or he's just a hustle guy. So I like the nucleus that the Celtics have. They have a lot of guys that do different things, and they just gel really well together. You had 32 from Tatum, 29 from Jaylen Brown, 19 from Kemba Walker, just solid contributions all up and down. So this Boston Celtics team is scary. You're right. Without Ben Simmons for the Sixers, I'm sorry, Joel Embiid, for as great as you are, you're not going to be able to carry this team by yourself. Tobias Harris, Al Horford, and Josh Richardson are going to have the games of their lives if they want to, be in this series with the Celtics. So I think this series is a little like you were talking about the Clippers and Mavericks series, where it's the first game, teams are kind of feeling themselves out. But I expect Boston to come out in game 2 and kind of exert their dominance and really, basically tell the Sixers, you guys don't have a fighting chance. So I can see a sweep. Maybe the Sixers get one game, but this should be a relatively easy series for the Boston Celtics. That kills me to say.
I mean, when you look at the stat, I mean, Jason Tatum going for 32 today, Jaylen Brown for 29, Kemba Walker for 19. And that's what, I mean, as a scare, and Marcus Smart has 2 points, and they still win by 8. It's very similar, like you said, the Clippers, where their roster is good enough to where, you can't have a bad or okay night from everybody, but you can have some guys just disappear. And when you have Jason Tatum do what he did without even using the 3-point ball to get 32 points, that's impressive. When you have Jaylen Brown making 5 threes, that's impressive. When you have Kemba Walker making 5 threes, that's, not in the heat. I looked at this, it was free throws. He made 5 free throws. He didn't make 5 threes. But nonetheless, this is a very good team, and it's young. And then when you look at the 76ers, to my point, you needed help from Al Horford, and he goes for 6 points and a -18 on the game. That can't happen when one of your top players leaves. And that's why I'm talking about with a lot of these older guys. I don't trust them in this bubble system, especially early on. Later in the playoffs, it's okay. That's why I'm talking about the Clippers getting their legs, right? I think guys like Lou Williams, they're a little older. They need to get their legs, and then they'll be there, and they'll be at that superstar form. But, Al Horford did exactly what I expect a lot of these older guys to do. And it's not perform as well as they normally would in a playoff atmosphere, because it's not a playoff atmosphere. It kind of just seems like regular season games. They're hyped up and projected as playoff games. But we will move on to the last game of Monday's game 1, the last series we'll talk about here. Nuggets and Jazz. Very, very impressive series on paper. Lots of stars on each of these teams. This game lived up to the hype. It went to OT. Donovan Mitchell, like I mentioned, with 57 points. He had 50 during the regulation of the game, too. It's not like he got 57 because it went into OT. He only scored 7 points in overtime. He had 50 to keep his team, in there. Great performances from Jamal Murray and Jokic, like we'd expect. And here's my point on this series. Now, this is what I want to talk about with this series specifically. This was a tale of 2 similar teams where one team had only one guy play well, one of the stars play well, and the other team had 2. You had Jamal Murray and Jokic working like one of the most well-oiled machines since Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal in today's games. The way they were playing.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
The pick and roll game was awesome today. Watch them. And then you have Donovan Mitchell, who his second star is supposed to be Rudy Gobert, and Gobert just didn't do enough today. And Mitchell having to score 57 points and losing doesn't sound like it's Mitchell's fault, right? So I look at this as Gobert has to step up if the Jazz want any chance in this series, because the Nuggets, especially with Michael Porter Jr. now in that lineup playing well, they're an extremely dangerous team for the entire NBA. But yeah, so Jared, what are your thoughts on this series? Kind of just hearing what I just said too.
Well, I want to ask you quickly because you didn't bring him up, but the Utah Jazz are also without Mike Conley, right? Who they traded from the Memphis Grizzlies. Conley, him and his wife just had a baby, so obviously it's understandable why he left the bubble to go home to be there for the birth of his child. The question is, when will he be back? Will it be at some point in this series?
Here's the thing. So he has to do a 4-day quarantine when he comes back. So even if he showed up on the day of the game today, Monday, or if he showed up Tuesday, he likely won't play until at least Game 4, Game 5 in this series. So again, back to my point, that's why Gobert needs to step up. You can't blame Mike Conley, right? They knew before the series started he wasn't going to be there. And Donovan Mitchell stepped up, and a lot of other players in that team stepped up relatively. There's a lot of role players in that team besides the 3 guys. But without Mike Conley, Gobert just didn't do enough. I know it's a tough matchup, but for a guy that's as tall and freakishly long as he is, that just can't happen, in my opinion.
Right. No, you're right. And I'm looking at, the depth that the Denver Nuggets have, and you're totally right. Jamal Murray, Jokic, they're a nightmare, and their pick and roll game is very strong. And you're right, Michael Porter Jr. coming out of college, right? This guy was going to come in, he was going to be a role player. He was a great college athlete, dealt with injuries. But the way that he's come in, he only had 3 3-pointers, but there was one series where he got the defensive rebound, dribbled the ball all the way up the court, literally just stopped at the 3-point line and popped it like it was nothing. Like he was the star. Like Jokic and Jamal Murray weren't even there. Like he was the guy. That's the type of confidence that Michael Porter Jr. has right now to be that third scorer. So you're right. Even though the Denver Nuggets are technically third in the West right now, if I'm the Lakers and I'm the Clippers, I'm scared of this team.
Yep.
There's no way that you can overlook this team at all. And then you get bench contributions from the likes of Jeremy Grant, Monte Morris, 19 and 14 points respectively, to add to the list with the starting 5. Denver is a scary team. This will be a good series because Utah is still a good team, right? They're very tough. You have Joe Ingles and Royce O'Neal who gave them some good minutes as well. So Utah's not going to go away. I just think Denver has a little too much firepower in the end. I could see Utah winning a game or 2, right? I think this series could go 6, but in the end, Denver will prevail and Denver will move on.
Yeah, I don't think there's a way Denver loses a series unless they lose Jokic or Murray. And I even think it would have to be Jokic. I think even if you have Jokic on that team, period, in the lineup, I think they're winning this series. That's how good I think that guy is. But no, I mean, when you have Mike Conley come back, and if they can come back and win this next game, you look at it and you go, if you're Utah, you go, hey, guys, we lost the first game in OT. And Jamal Murray went off in OT, took advantage. Mitchell made a couple of mistakes. He did the backcourt violation or whatever he did, the 8-second, which can't happen. But that stuff does happen sometimes. So I'm not going to blame the whole game on Donovan Mitchell, right? You look at this, and anytime you go into OT, I think you look at that as almost like a half win, right? You go, okay, we're right there, right? But we have to play well this next game to prove to ourselves that we are legitimately in this series. So that's why I'm saying I think Gobert needs to play better. I think Ingles needs to do a better job of covering Jamal Murray. I know Jamal Murray went off, but Ingles is supposed to be that guy that's supposed to disrupt that pick and roll.
Do you know how slow Joe Ingles is? Do you see the way that he's Joe Ingles ain't gonna guard Jamal Murray?
You're crazy. He can guard Paul George. I know it's a different type of player, but he can stop Paul George. He can stop Jamal Murray. I'm just saying.
You just said it right there. He's a different type of player. He is not Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray is a lot quicker. if the Utah Jazz's strategy is to put Joe
Use
Ingles on
physicality.
that's going to be.
Use physicality then, though. Use physicality, like beat up Jamal Murray if you have.
Guess what? Physicality doesn't work when Jamal Murray is past you and you're eating his dust.
It works.
I'm sorry.
Physicality
only
the head
you
from
can stay in
behind.
front of a.
That's good. No,
Quick question before we move on. For the Utah Jazz to succeed and win games in this series, do you think without Mike Conley, is it more important for Donovan Mitchell to go off for 57 like he had in this game, or for Rudy Gobert and others to actually step up? Because as great as Donovan Mitchell is, I don't see him obviously scoring 57 points every game of the series. So if he scores 35, right, or somewhere around there, does Utah still have a chance, or does Donovan Mitchell literally need to be Superman for the Jazz to win?
No, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. I mean, we've seen Damian Lillard go off for an average of 50-something points, and they're barely winning games. It doesn't work in the NBA. You have to have two guys. Even look at Michael Jordan. He needed Scottie Pippen, right? He needed Dennis Rodman. Michael Jordan couldn't have done it by himself on those Bulls teams. Kobe didn't do it by himself, right? He always had Pau Gasol. It's not an indictment on you to say that you can't do it by yourself. No one ever has been able to, seriously. If you look at the history, everybody's needed a second guy. There have been teams that have stacked their teams with 3 or 4 to help themselves out, but you need that second guy. And that's why I'm stressing that Murray and Jokic gelling so well. That's what's scary about the NBA, because they have Michael Porter Jr. The Jazz right now, without Mike Conley, you don't have that Michael Porter Jr. So you need Rudy Gobert to play better. He can't have 17 points, and he damn sure can't only have 7 rebounds, being 7'8" or whatever he is. Right? I know he's not 7'8", but I'm just saying his length is like he's 8'4". So that dude just needs to play better, okay? And Donovan Mitchell, I do think that, him taking over games, it's awesome, but I do think there's a little bit, and I think this does, you look at Damian Lillard also with this, I think when these guys do this, it gets the other guys cold. Like, I think the other guys aren't ready to make the big shots when Donovan Mitchell is just shooting every single time. I know he kept him in the game, but I ultimately think that the reason they lost, number one, is because of Gobert's, just inconsistency as a scorer and a rebounder, but also because near the end of that game, it was literally Mitchell playing like backyard basketball by himself, and he was making shots, but he also missed some and made the mistake at the end thinking too much. So, no, I think they absolutely need Gobert to play well, or they'll win like one game in the series. The Nuggets are too good; they have too much firepower. You have to play your heart out every single game, and you will have to against the Clippers and the Lakers and potentially the Bucks too. So they need to just step up and understand this is the NBA playoffs, and you can't mess around. Doesn't matter if it's in a gym, a normal gym with no fans.
I hear. No, I wanted to throw it out there because I agree with you, but I wanted to see, because I really do think Mitchell's going to have to play lights out again. He's going to have to go for 30 or 40 every night. But there's no way.
Yeah, Donovan Mitchell, he is the scorer. I mean, Mike Conley isn't the scorer on this team either, but Mike Conley makes it a little easier on you because he'll get you open, right? He'll find you open. Mitchell doesn't have to create every shot. Gobert can't really create his own shot either, so he needs Donovan Mitchell. Yes, Donovan Mitchell needs to play like a superstar in this series, but he shouldn't have to be LeBron James or Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan, right? He needs that help. He's still a young dude. He's not there yet. You never know later in his career, but right now he needs that help. All right, let's move to Tuesday's game ones and the rest of these series and kind of predict these. We'll just quickly, we both think the Milwaukee Bucks are going to beat the Orlando Magic. When you look at the way the playoffs were structured, the 7th, 8th, 9th seeds in these playoffs for the East were not really playoff teams. I think you could have added the 9th and 10th seeds from the West, and they would have been better options to play the Raptors and Bucks. Not saying they would have won, but, you look at Memphis and you look at the Suns, those would have been pretty entertaining series. We both have them, having an easy sweep here. Jared, we have been hearing a rumor, though, about Giannis kind of not being happy about his teammates. Do you think this affects them this series, or do you think this is something that goes on later when they're playing the likes of the Celtics or Raptors in an Eastern Conference final, most likely?
I think this was mental for Giannis, and I think he wants it to affect his team for this series to basically say, listen, yes, we are on paper and in reality the better team than Orlando, but we also can't go into this thinking that we're just gonna, walk on the court and win. Let's all remember that, these players are still playing in a bubble. They're still in Orlando. Things are some players are probably still adjusting to this different type of lifestyle,
Oh,
right?
for
So
sure. Yeah.
there is no home court advantage. There's no fans, right? It is a different feel and different mentality. Just listen to LeBron James, who said this will be the most difficult playoff run that he will ever have to go through in his entire career, and he hasn't even played in the game yet, right? Their game is tomorrow. So I think Giannis was really trying to send a message to his team, hey, we better not overlook Orlando, right? Even though, yes, Orlando is not going to win the series, but Milwaukee better come out and basically from the jump, show their dominance and blow Orlando out. And I think that's what Giannis was trying to do, was send a message through the media, right? Because I'm sure he's also talked to them personally in the locker room, but to say, I'm letting y'all know right now, we are not messing around with this team. We're going to come out and we're going to beat them by 20 or 30 every single night and show the rest of the league that we're not playing. And I think that's what he was doing. So I'm totally cool with what he said. And like I said, I think it was just kind of like a reminder of, hey guys, listen, we're not going to come out and mess around. We're not going to do what the Clippers did, even though they went out to that 18-2 run in the game today against the Mavericks, and then the Mavericks come back. We're going to go out to an 18-2 run and then extend it to 25-2, right? They're just going to literally exert their dominance in the entire series. So I'm totally cool with it. You're right. We don't need to waste our breath anymore on this series. Milwaukee will win. It will more than likely be a sweep. Sorry, Orlando. You're hosting the bubble. That's fantastic, but that's all you guys are getting.
Yeah, we won't pay attention, though, to Giannis specifically because obviously there's a lot of the rumors of him potentially switching teams soon. If the Bucks can't do it, I would hate that, but that's a discussion for another day. Let's move to the other Eastern Conference matchup in this series. The likely opponent for the Bucks, or no, well, this will be the opponent for the Bucks the way the bracket ends up. Heat and Pacers. Now, Jared, when I look at this series, I kind of see mid-level teams, right? You have the Heat with Jimmy Butler and a lot of other solid players, and you have the Pacers with Victor Oladipo and a lot of other solid players. I want to kind of analyze this series, but at the same point, they're going to end up playing Milwaukee, and it's almost like these guys are going to be playing their hearts out just to lose next round. Do you have the same thoughts on that, or do you think it's a little different? Do you think one of these teams has a chance in the second round?
From the perspective of looking into the future and saying, yes, one of these two teams will be facing Milwaukee, that's a daunting task. And do I think either of these teams can beat Milwaukee in a 7-game series? No. I do think Miami and Indiana are two more evenly matched teams. You're correct about that. The one thing that I am most interested about this series and why I'm so happy that these two are matched up is going to be the matchup between Jimmy Butler and TJ Warren. Now, for those who don't know, these two have a history, and it even happened in one of the bubble games. I believe it was a week or two ago when TJ Warren and Jimmy Butler were going at it, right? And then Jimmy Butler, after the game in the post game, kind of continued to bash on Warren. So there is some bad blood there going on, and I can't wait to see these guys go at it. I can see this game or this series potentially going 6 or 7 games because they are so evenly matched. But I'm going to give the slight edge to Miami. I think they have a little more depth, and I just kind of like them as a team a little more than Indiana. But you're right. I am happy that Victor Oladipo is back after missing the entire regular season before the season got postponed. Victor Oladipo is the guy on this team. So he was 50-50 on whether he was going to come back or not. And if his injury was 100% healed, he chose to kind of opt in. And obviously that's huge because without Oladipo, this wouldn't be a series at all. So, Indiana's a good team. I'm going to give the slight edge to Miami, and I think Miami will move on.
Well, I'll say I think Miami has to win this series because the way they built their team around Jimmy Butler, when you have and Bam Adebayo, let me not mention him. He was an all-star this year. Right. He's a genetic freak. He's an awesome player.
Averaging a double-double, 16 and 10.
That's what I'm saying. So you have you like we're talking about, you have that two-headed monster with Miami. You have the Pacers, and they have a lot of solid players. I'll tell you this. I don't know where the hell TJ Warren came from, but he's not bringing the Pacers past this series. I think it's all on Victor Oladipo's shoulders. And I think that's a tough task because Jimmy Butler is a very solid player that has a lot of playoff experience as well with the Chicago Bulls back in the day, with the 76ers last year, and now he's going to be in here with the Heat. So
TJ Warren came from North Carolina State, and he was the 14th pick by the Phoenix Suns, if you were just wondering and wanted to get technical about where he actually came from. You asked. I'm just here to give the facts.
Jared, I thank you because I did not know that. I knew he was on the Suns before, but obviously the Suns screw up every player but Devin Booker, apparently. So
no, he's made a name for himself in Indiana, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what he scored, like 53 points the other day or something like that. In one of the bubble games, he scored over 50 points. Yeah, so, I mean, impressive. But again, Lillard scored 60. He barely won that game. Lillard scored 50 in the other play-in game or whatever. They barely won that one, and Mitchell scored 57. So it doesn't really matter. You need that second guy. So you got T.J. Warren, Victor Oladipo firing away. I think the Pacers might have a chance. I do believe, though, Butler and Adebayo will get themselves to the Bucks matchup. And I would love to see a fiery Jimmy Butler versus the Bucks because I just love to see, though, that competitiveness. And a lot of those guys in the Bucks are very competitive, and a lot of the guys in the Heat are competitive. So I'm excited about that series if it does happen.
Yeah. One last thing I forgot to mention. T.J. Warren is actually dealing with plantar fasciitis in his right foot. Now, he's going to play through it, but that's just one more thing that he's got to deal with. Yeah. And then you add on the fact that he's going to be, probably guarding Jimmy Butler and having to run around with him for an entire series.
That
doesn't sound good. So,
no.
Yeah, that all the more reason why I'm picking Miami.
Absolutely. All right, we are moving on to the two remaining Western Conference matches we have not discussed, and that is we will start with the Thunder and Rockets series. Jared, this is a very entertaining one on paper for sure. You, of course, have Russell Westbrook in his first year with Houston after trying his hardest to get the Thunder to win a finals. He can blame Kevin Durant for that. But he's playing against his old team. The Rockets kind of shipped Chris Paul over to the Thunder for nothing, kind of threw him to the Wolves. Chris Paul's played amazing. He hasn't got hurt yet, so he's still a great player. And then, of course, they have James Harden. The interesting thing about this series, though, is Russell Westbrook is not playing early on in the series, at least game one. Jared, what are your thoughts on how this series will be affected by Russell Westbrook not playing early?
Well, first of all, I just want to point out that Oklahoma City's come out of nowhere. You're right. When Chris Paul got traded there, everyone and their mother knew that Oklahoma City was trying to get rid of him, right? They basically signed him to then use him as trade bait to trade him away. They didn't want to deal with his contract. Problem was, no other team wanted to take on that big contract of Chris Paul. So Oklahoma City was basically stuck saying, okay, we'll keep you for a year. Maybe we make the playoffs if we're lucky. Maybe we won't. And at the end of the season, we'll let you go. Sorry, no hard feelings. That's just the business side of the NBA, right? Well, Chris Paul basically said, screw you guys. I'm going to show you that I can still play and that I still deserve the contract that I'm currently getting. It's funny. Oklahoma City actually had less than a 2% chance to make the playoffs at the start of the season. And now look at them, right? One of the kind of Cinderella teams, if you will, of this entire NBA season so far. So, yeah, the Houston Rockets cannot overlook this team. But in reality, you look at them and the fact if they're shooting threes like we know they can, Oklahoma City's done. With or without Russell Westbrook, obviously the Rockets want Westbrook there for his leadership, his tenacity. He does it on the defensive side of the ball just as much as he does on the offensive side of the ball. But with James Harden, Eric Gordon, Jeff Green, Covington, Ben McLemore, Austin Rivers, PJ Tucker, all those guys shoot threes, right? Like Houston does not take a 2-point shot unless it's a layup. Like literally, Mike D'Antoni will yell at his players if they shoot a 15-foot mid-range jump shot. It is, if you're in transition, you get a layup or you kick it out to a 3-point shooter and you shoot a three. They're going to average 50 to 60 3-point attempts per game. Mark my words. And if they're hitting close to 50%, it's a wrap. There's no way Oklahoma City is going to win. Now, I think as this bubble series has gone on with the 8 games that Houston's played, I think they've gotten better, especially the game against the Lakers, which is the last game that I watched of Houston. And they basically blew the Lakers out. Now, they were shooting very well. And so I'm anticipating them continuing that streak. And if they do, Houston will easily move on to the second round. So for as well as Oklahoma City has played throughout the entire regular season, I'm sorry, but they do not have the firepower that the Houston Rockets have.
Yeah, no, I mean it'll be disappointing for Oklahoma City fans, but I think you're right. Like Houston's one of those teams. It's kind of one of those wild cards teams might make the finals because the dynamic of Westbrook and Harden, it looks like a different style of the Rockets, right, Jared? Like it's Chris Paul and Harden. Those are kind of premier ball handlers. Like Russell Westbrook, he has so much energy. And he's so violent the way he plays, and he can just do it all game. When he was with the Thunder, right? Like he almost overdid it, right? We were talking about you need that second guy. He has Harden to be able to take some time off for him, right? Westbrook doesn't have to do his craziness during a game to win it all. He can have Harden just sit there, make free throws, make threes, make layups. He'll do his thing as well, and they're both ready to go. Remember what I said, Jared? Playoff Westbrook rested might be the most dangerous thing in the NBA right now. I said this, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago. I'm excited to see when Westbrook comes back. I know he's dealing with this little injury, but I do not think this will phase the Rockets. I think they will win the series. I'll say they win in 6, just because I think the Thunder will play their ass off, and Chris Paul will take a couple wins away from his former team. They may win game 1. But I think the Rockets, it won't mean anything because I think the Oklahoma City Thunder, they're a good coach team. They're a good team, but the Rockets will win this series. And I'm excited to see a second-round matchup between the Clippers and Rockets, which would be awesome to watch. Scary for me.
Mine too.
But awesome.
Let's go Rockets.
Well, speaking of bias, let's move on to the final series of the day. Probably the most anticipated amongst NBA fans, the Los Angeles Lakers versus the 8 seed Portland Trailblazers. Jared, I could hear it. I could hear Lakers fans shaking in their boots, thinking about Damian Lillard versus the Lakers. The Lakers, as noted on this podcast and by many others, have not been playing well in this bubble. They haven't been shooting well from 3. Their last game was impressive. They got Kyle Kuzma to make that awesome winning shot. They set the play out for him. It was almost like a little tease for Laker fans, right? Like they were like, "Oh, we messed around the whole time. We got Kuzma ready. He's gonna be a focal point." Like maybe not.
I hope
but,
so.
Yeah. So Jared, what are your thoughts on this series, man? I mean, this is your team. This is the one team a lot of Lakers fans said they didn't want to face, and now seeing what Damian Lillard's done the last 2 or 3 games, what are your thoughts?
I'm a little nervous. I'm a little nervous. If you can't tell by my voice or what I just said, yes. No, listen, Portland is, first of all, Portland's on an 8 seed, right? LeBron James already come out and said this. Portland, in reality, if the NBA season would have continued and not been postponed, Portland would probably be, a 4 or 5 seed right now. They are way better than an 8 seed. It's just circumstances have changed. But they are a way better team than what their current seed is. And the way that Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum are playing right now, that 1-2 combination guard to guard is literally unstoppable. The fact that Damian Lillard can pull up from half court essentially and drill 3-pointers like they're nothing is absolutely ridiculous, number 1. But number 2, it is scary because he has unlimited range. He has the green light of all green lights at any point. I don't care if he goes 0 for 20, he's still got a green light, right? And yes, the Lakers have Anthony Davis and LeBron James, who are 2 defensive MVP candidates. But, can either of them really stop Damian Lillard? No. You can only hope to contain this guy. And then if for some reason Lillard is having an off night, they've got CJ McCollum, who in their last game, the game that got them into the playoffs, basically carried them in the fourth quarter. It wasn't Damian Lillard. I don't believe Lillard, he might have had 4 points in that fourth quarter, but it was CJ McCollum who scored like the final 6 points and basically put the dagger in the hearts to get them into the playoffs. So this team is they are scary, right? And then listen, you've got Nurkic, who's averaging 17.6 points a game. Hassan Whiteside, who's giving you 15. Carmelo Anthony is still giving you a solid 15. And even though all he does is really shoot threes, listen, he's a veteran guy. He's been in the playoffs before. He knows what to do in these situations. So Gary Trent Jr., who's also came out of nowhere, right? And he's all of a sudden a 3-point lethal shooter. So the thing that has killed the Lakers throughout the entire regular season and even this bubble season so far has been a very good 3-point shooting team. And that's exactly what Portland does. So the Lakers, you're right. They got Kyle Kuzma going in that last game, got his confidence up. But to me, this is not about Anthony Davis or LeBron James or even Kyle Kuzma. This is about Danny Green. This is about Alex Caruso and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope being able to contribute consistently with scoring, right? Because if the Lakers just rely on Anthony Davis and LeBron James to score, they might lose this first round. As crazy as it is to say, I'm serious right now. But seeing the games, the previous 8 games that they've played so far in this bubble, gives me zero confidence that they can come in and just exert their dominance on this Portland Trailblazers team. Now, the one thing that does give me hope is that the Lakers have had a couple more days off and more rest, and Portland has literally been fighting for their lives, backs against the wall, and they just played a game. Was it yesterday or 2 days ago? So they're not as fresh. But then again, you know what? They're in a rhythm, and they're kind of hot right now. So maybe they're just riding off of that high. But the Lakers are really going to have to come in and hit the pedal from the word go. And like I said, the Lakers have the talent, and I think they will win this series. But I can see the series going 6 games. I'm not confident that the Lakers are just going to come in and sweep this Portland Trailblazers team and immediately move on to the second round. They're really going to have their heads screwed on straight, be, a defensive-minded team from the get-go. And because like I said, I'm scared and I'm nervous, and this was the last team that I wanted to see the Lakers face in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, you say a lot of good things here. When you look at this roster right now, it is better than the regular season. Nurkic had a broken leg. He was not supposed to play in the playoffs this year. He's back. Whiteside's still on the team. Lillard going off. McCollum, Carmelo Anthony is on this team doing. He's playing well. He's made some big shots. So, and then of course Gary Trent Jr. as well. It's interesting. I just looked up the stats of the Portland Trailblazers versus the Lakers. The 3 times they played them this year, I believe they all happened during the normal regular season, not in the bubble. Lillard, of course, played well, averaged 36 points per game. So interesting right there. That's a lot of points. In all of these are 3 games as well. McCollum, 17 points per game, not bad. Here's a really interesting one, Jared. I don't know what happened in these games. Maybe Anthony Davis wasn't playing. I don't know off the top of my head. I'm just looking at the stats. Hassan Whiteside, who was the center, like I mentioned, Nurkic didn't play this year. Hassan Whiteside averaged 22 and 13 against the Lakers. That cannot happen with guys like Anthony Davis and Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee at center. I'm disappointed that even happened in the regular season. So there's a lot of factors going into this series, which is why we're talking about it the most, that make it interesting for an 8-1 series. Normally in the NBA, 1-8 series is like the Magic and Bucks, right? Or like the Raptors and Nets. It's easy going. It's going to be 4 or 5 games max and it's over. But yeah, I mean, there's a legitimate stake here to think that the Portland could really take some games away from the Lakers. Do I personally think the Lakers are going to lose this series? No, not with LeBron James on your team. You're not losing the first series. But can the Trailblazers back the Lakers for the rest of the playoffs? Absolutely. And I do think that is what will happen. And this is the worst case scenario for one of the oldest teams in the NBA. Like you mentioned, Jared, you need those guys like Danny Green, like Alex Caruso, and the others to make the big shots. The biggest one, though, is Kyle freaking Kuzma. Kyle Kuzma needs to be that third guy. If the Lakers want to win a championship, they're not going to do it with just Anthony Davis and LeBron. They're going to do it with Kyle Kuzma because the Lakers bench has proven not to be the best this year, right? They had a better bench like the Nuggets or the Clippers. That's why we don't mention how if Kawhi and Paul George don't play well, they can still win games, right? The Lakers can't win games if LeBron doesn't play well and it's just Anthony Davis and it's not Kuzma. And Kuzma showed, to be honest, only to really play well when he's the focal point number 2 guy. And so far, the Lakers done a bad job during the regular season of not making Kuzma more of a focal point. They put the focal point on LeBron to win the number 1 seed. They put the focal point on Anthony Davis, what they should have been, but they didn't do it enough. So the Lakers need to really, really tie it down, get Kuzma going. get those other guys open shots and not make it too difficult for LeBron on themselves. I don't think LeBron can just will the Lakers all the way to the finals like he has. The West is not the East. I'm telling you, it's totally different for LeBron this time around.
So you're right. Obviously, Kyle Kuzma has to be involved. He needs to be that third star, that third scorer for the Lakers. But where I disagree with you is I think the Lakers, when they're at their best and when Kyle Kuzma is playing well, is when the Lakers get him involved early. It's not necessarily that Kyle Kuzma has to be like the number 2 scorer on the team. It's just get him involved early. Like literally in the first quarter and within the first 5 possessions, get him an easy layup. Get him an open jump shot. Get his confidence going early so that as the game goes on, he's like, okay, I'm being involved. I've already hit some shots, right? When Kyle Kuzma only takes 2 shots in the first half and he misses both of them, his confidence level just immediately dips. And then you ask him in the fourth quarter, LeBron James gets double teamed, Anthony Davis can't get the ball, and you give it to Kyle Kuzma, and he's just like not confident about a shot. So it's not necessarily about Kyle Kuzma being that second scorer per se. It's just getting him involved early. Get him the ball. He's a kind of a drive and slash type of guy. Give him the ball. Let him go get fouled. I don't care if it's going to the free throw line. Let him see the ball go through the net. And I think that's what will start to give him confidence so that in the fourth quarter, if and when LeBron James and Anthony Davis need a little bit of a rest, Kyle Kuzma can be out there and he's got the confidence to take that jump shot or to go and drive and kind of be that focal point scorer. So that's really where I think Kyle Kuzma needs to thrive.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying he needs to be the second scorer necessarily, but I am kind of agreeing with you. He needs to be more involved. I had some stats up here and a video started playing, so I had to pause. I have to get this back up. I was gonna see how many minutes Kyle Kuzma is averaging this year, because I do personally think, obviously during the playoffs, the stars do play more. I think Kyle Kuzma, he needs to be out there like 30 plus minutes for these games. I would go so far as to start Kyle Kuzma. You're saying get him really early. So, Jared, are you saying that he shouldn't be the 6th man off the bench? Are you saying he should be in the starting lineup?
I do.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's the big change that they did against the Nuggets the other day. I know the Nuggets didn't really try at the end, and they took their starters out, but it was still a good game, and Kuzma still played well. I think you need to put your best lineup forward, especially LeBron and Anthony Davis ain't going to guard McCollum and Lillard. So you need to have that other defender as well, that faster guy to kind of be able to catch up with them as well. But yeah, I think Kyle Kuzma needs to be out there 30 plus minutes. They need to rotate Davis and Kuzma, LeBron and Kuzma, LeBron and Davis, and I don't think there should be a time in the game where one of those two guys, where only one of those guys is on the court, in my opinion. I think when Rajon Rondo comes back, you can then do that because I think Rondo's a great ball handler and he can facilitate the ball. But I do think that Kuzma, Anthony Davis, and LeBron all need to be over 30 minutes, maybe even over 35 minutes in these playoff games against every single opponent. Because if they get through the Blazers, they're going to have to face the who they get faced. They're going to have to face the I believe it's the Nuggets or the Jazz. Tough matchup, right? Is it? Wait, let me make sure we're right on that too, though, because I do want to make sure. What are the seeds? Whenever I look up this stuff, I can never see who actually are the seeds in these games.
Yeah, so obviously Lakers and Blazers. Lakers are 1, Blazers are 8.
Yeah, and Clippers are 2 and 7 with the Mavericks.
Yes.
Real quick.
Denver and Utah are 3 and 6.
Yeah,
which means that Houston and OKC are 4 or 5.
So Lakers, if you get past the Trailblazers, you get Harden and Westbrook. So get this stuff ready.
Well, you know what? Then it maybe is somewhat of a blessing in disguise that the Lakers are getting Portland in the first round. Not to say if they would have got a lesser team that they would not come out as hard, but for the Lakers, it's like, okay, we've got to play well from the jump from the first game of this first round of the playoffs, so that maybe coming out of this Portland series, they are more prepared. Their heads are screwed on a little bit tighter for if and when they do play Houston. And it's not like, okay, we're coming off of an easy sweep series and then we have to turn it on. So who knows? Maybe I'm being the optimist here, and you can call me biased, whatever you want to say, but maybe it's a good thing that the Lakers are getting tested early so that they can, play better if and when they do move on to that second round against a better team in Houston.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting, and I hate to look forward because obviously the Rockets Lakers series would be awesome, but they have to take Trailblazers seriously. I am glad that LeBron is taking this seriously too. I'm glad he's admitting kind of the Lakers issues as well. He's saying Kyle Kuzma needs to evolve. He's saying this is going to be the toughest thing. There's a lot of times I think LeBron's kind of held some stuff in and tried to play politics with the media and stuff like that with the way they're there. But I think he's saying, I can't mess with this. Right? I want to use a different word, but I can't mess with any of these teams. You have Lillard and McCollum, then you have Harden and Westbrook, and then you probably have the Nuggets or Clippers. And then you have, obviously, the NBA Finals with the Bucks or the Raptors, right? Or maybe even Celtics. At that point, I think the easiest matchup would be the NBA Finals, which is crazy. But this is going to be really tough for Lakers. I think they need to figure out what's going on in this first round. I don't care. Again, just like the Clippers, Jared, I think the Lakers, they shouldn't mind if this series goes a little long. Because I think they need their legs. I think they need to figure out their team right now. And I think specifically they need to figure out how to get Kyle Kuzma more involved. Whew. All right, well, there you go, guys. Those are our 8. We kind of did our little 8 previews. We will be back. We'll have to figure out, Jared, a way to discuss these NBA games. Maybe we'll wait till the first round's over to discuss the NBA games again in kind of length. We'll probably go over some of the topics. Let's say the Lakers are down 2-1 to Portland. Like, we'll talk about them. But as
Don't
far
say
as,
don't say that. Could have picked any team. Could have
Jared,
picked any
you said
series.
they might lose the series. Jared, you said they might lose the series. I'm just saying. That
doesn't mean you have to agree with it and go with it, okay? You just let it go. You let me be, and let me be a nervous wrecker in these games. That's all you have to do.
But yes, so we went over every single game. We think we got Bucks and Raptors easy wins. Celtics should win their series as well, and then the Heat Pacers the most even series. We both believe the Heat, right, win that series. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when you look at the West, we just discussed the Lakers. Jared's not so confident, but we both do believe the Lakers will find a way to get past Portland. The Clippers will find a way to get past Dallas. Houston will get past the Thunder, but it might not be the easiest series. And then we both believe the Nuggets will get past the Jazz. So real quick before we end the podcast, I just want to mention that I still do believe that the Los Angeles Clippers will get to the NBA Finals, and they will
get out of here with
that. The Rockets or Nuggets.
To see that whack jersey. Get out of here. Really quick.
Yeah.
Really quick. Final thought. We do have to get out of here very quickly to end the podcast. Good news. The NFL first game of the season with the Chiefs and the Texans. The Chiefs came out today and said that there will be around 20% of fans in attendance. So we will have a live sporting event with fans very soon. And I believe that number will be around 16,000 fans that will be allowed into the stadium. Yeah. So, good news. Obviously, we're going to have football back soon, but we will also have fans in attendance. So stay tuned for that. Just had to throw that out there. Heard that today and got very excited.
Yeah, I saw an article before that announcement too, that most of the teams are going to do something like this. Now, we've heard the Cowboys say they're going to fit as many people. I realistically think the NFL should just make a rule that only 20% of the stadium should be filled. Let's not mess with the coronavirus, but I'm telling you guys, you know how many people go to a Laker game? Like 18, 16, 17,000 people. It's not going to be loud because it's not going to be the same thing because the stadiums aren't constructed like that, but it's still a ton of people, and it will definitely look awesome to see people on opening night in Kansas City to celebrate that achievement. I personally hope that the Cardinals open up their stadium for fans. I'd love to be able to go to a game and say I went to a game this year, and the NFL is providing the best chance for that. So I do hope that most of the other NFL teams maybe change their minds. Like I know the Las Vegas Raiders said they're not going to have fans all year. That's super surprising because they opened up all their casinos. So I don't really know why that makes any sense. But as far as logic goes from the government over there. But I think when you look at a lot of these stadiums, there's a way you can social distance. As long as everybody's wearing their masks, the way these stadiums are built, you can separate seats and it can still be an enjoyable experience without spreading the coronavirus. They'll have to figure out ways to not clog people in the archways and clog people in the entrances. But I think once people are actually in the game, I don't really think it's a problem at that point. You got to figure out the bathroom situation as well. But I think everyone also knows what's going on, and they're not just going to be in there without their long story short, it is awesome to hear that we will actually have fans for opening day. That made me really happy because I know that 2 games I was excited about. I know Lambeau Field said they're not going to have games, their first 2 home games without fans. That's going to look real weird. They're not going to have fans for their first 2 home games. And then I believe it was the Saints and Tampa Bay game, Drew Brees versus Tampa Bay, or Drew Brees versus Tom Brady, is not going to have fans. So those were the first things we heard. Now to hear that the opening game on the Thursday is going to have fans, I couldn't be more excited. It's a very, very good sign in a time where stuff has gone backwards recently. But yes, thank you for bringing that up, Jared, because that made me very, very happy earlier today.
What we do.
Absolutely. All right, yeah, so that's our NBA first round preview. We will be back next week or a little later, maybe the weekend or something like that, to figure out the NBA situation. And if any other sports news comes over, we got you, and we will figure out a way to get to you and talk about it. But for this podcast, it is done. Once again, I'm Nick Nenad.
I'm Jared Smith.
And it's been the Cover 2 Podcast. We will see you next time.